Welcome everyone to the Summer of Suikoden, an event with the aim of getting the rest of the gaming world a little more familiar with one of the most underrated series in all of RPGdom. So if you've ever been curious about Suikoden, or you just need a refresher, don't worry, this ragtag team of YouTubers has you covered. And since the goal is to get you guys more familiar with the series, let's dive right in. Okay, so in basic terms, Suikoden hit the scene on the PS1, and after an extremely successful follow-up, ruled as a cult hit, teeter-tottering on the edge of widespread appeal. The PS2 entries, however, are a little more polarizing. It seemed like the original Suikoden's shine had dulled just a little bit, at least depending on who you ask. So the question is, can the fourth entry in the series come close to that sweet spot carved out by numbers 1 and 2? Well, I'm Jared, and this is Avalanche Reviews.
I observed your dealings with my father. Oh, how he fills me with utter disgrace.
Suikoden 4 takes place almost 200 years before the events of the first game, and tells the story of a young knight of the Gaian Empire and his close friend Snow. No, not that Snow. Just graduating from the Knight Academy, our hero and his highborn sidekick encounter a pirate on a seemingly routine escort mission. After some high seas combat, we find out that this pirate possesses one of the 27 true runes, the Rune of Punishment. And even though it grants him immense power, it also drains him of his life essence. After losing his grip on the rune, he's consumed by it, and it chooses a Gaian commander as its new host. Shortly after this, the good times keep on rolling in when a large-scale attack leads that same commander to meet a similar fate and sees our main character as its new victim. Being the little bitch that he is, Snow betrays his friend and fingers him as their commander's killer.
It was him! He did it to the commander!
From here, the story really ramps up, and we learn that the Kuluk nation plans on invading all of the southern islands and using their strength to crush any empire that gets in their way. Our main character, now in exile from his home and government, must rally a force big enough to challenge the Kuluk Empire and keep them from getting their hands on the Rune of Punishment, all while trying not to let that same rune suck him dry of life essence. And on that note, I should probably make a retraction here. See, in my review of the game's spin-off prequel, Suikoden Tactics, I said that there's only a couple of small links between it and 4. Well, that was before I reacquainted myself with this story. In retrospect, Tactics gives a hell of a backstory to 4 and even fleshes out some of its more underdeveloped characters. Those of you thinking about checking out 4 will definitely get a kick out of seeing all these familiar faces and seeing how they came to be involved with the Rune of Punishment. So now we should probably get back into the game, right? Suikoden 4's story is really engaging, and seeing how these PS2 Suikoden games get such a bad rap, this sort of took me by surprise. I ended up getting pretty invested in the events taking place here, and it's hard to deny that old Suikoden trope of gathering a huge force represented by the 108 Stars of Destiny. Overall, I love this story, but I can also understand why I've never heard it mentioned in any underrated RPG list. And that's because this incredibly solid tale has one really big flaw. It takes a long time to get going. After a lukewarm start, the real meat of the narrative only kicks in around the 5 to 7 hour mark. After this, things kick into high gear, new antagonists are introduced, an honest-to-God goal is laid out, and you finally get to start collecting members to this little resistance movement. At this point, the pace changes gears, and Suikoden 4 goes from being boring to completely engaging in no time flat. Now, as a reviewer, I have to warn you about this rather large downside, but as an RPG fan, I also want to urge you to go ahead and take the plunge anyways. It may take way too long to get up and going, but once it does, it'll reward those who weather through the almost inert first 5 hours. Seriously, if there was ever an example of good things coming to those who wait, well, this is it. Suikoden, no matter how much quality fluctuates between titles, has always stuck to a pretty rigid design scheme. Main characters go from downtrodden and meaningless to leaders of a revolutionary army, bonus points if any one of the true runes are involved, and then topples an evil regime or corrupt government. This resistance force is always made up of 108 people who represent the Stars of Destiny, and in this sense, 4 fits right in line with its forefathers. In fact, the only places it veers off from the well-worn path are mostly just surface changes, and even those feel like proper successors to old Suikoden doctrine. Instead of a 6-person party, you're limited to just 4 teammates in combat, but battles still function in a similar manner. Once attacks are input, you still get to see the knockdown, drag-out brawls that the originals are known for, and as a fan, let me assure you, seeing all your characters attacking essentially at once never gets old. One-on-one duels have made a return, and rune attacks still work on a level system instead of the more traditional RPG mainstay, MP. Instead of the large-scale army skirmishes found in the PS1 classics, you now have strategy RPG/naval battles to contend with. Here you can staff and equip your fleet with any combination of party members and choose what elemental rune cannons to take into battle, giving a Fire Emblem-style rock-paper-scissors feel. You guys that love traveling the world searching for every last star of destiny and hoping you meet the obvious but ridiculous prerequisites required for recruiting them are still gonna love it here. Suikoden has always done a really good job at giving each potential party member their own personality, and this tradition is alive and kicking in 4. Of course, if side content is what you're looking for, whether it's gambling, a true-to-form trading system, or just collecting all the secret items and characters hidden in the game, Suikoden 4 probably has something for you. And now let's go over some of the changes that aren't so welcome. First up on this list is, well, let's give this a little context. I'm sort of sick and tired of modern game critics pissing and moaning about old RPGs being too grind-heavy. Listen, new age hipster dorks, we RPG fans love grinding, it's what we live for. And having said that, holy shit, this game's encounter rate is absolutely insane. It feels like almost every other step is a battle, and on the world map it's way worse. Oh yeah, okay, so let's talk about the world map a little bit. You guys know how the Japanese RPG went through some kind of weird Caribbean island coastal fishing village phase in the early 2000s? Seriously, what was with that? Well, Konami wasn't one to miss out on a trend, and instead of a world map, we have a gigantic ocean, which is really just an aesthetic change. I mean, they pretty much serve the same purpose, but when you combine an incredibly high encounter rate with a ship that moves slower than a sloth through jello, well, things get disastrous. Now on the plus side, battles are still really fun, which helps a lot, and you'll eventually gain party members and items that let you teleport around, but expect a pretty serious uphill fight until then. Okay, so I can admit those are some pretty damning criticisms, but honestly, once Suikoden 4 hits its stride, it's a damn fine RPG. There are so many of the old Suikoden mechanics here, and they all feel perfectly worked into this world. Fights are incredibly satisfying, and the general fun that's to be found in exploring this world in search of people to recruit comes in massive amounts when the game gets out of your way and lets you do just that. Now, maybe it's the clear divide between the game's high and low points that makes it stand out to me, but after I got past the 90-degree cliff set in my way, I found myself really basking in what a great RPG it was. I couldn't tell you what was going on in Konami's head when they okayed such a slog of a beginning, but if you possess what it takes to press on through the initial tedium, be prepared for a massively enjoyable experience.
Oops! Did I just blink into a new place? Excuse me, where am I?
The PS2 era was a weird time for RPGs. It seemed like even the big 2D powerhouse series were finally jumping on the 3D bandwagon, and unfortunately, not doing too well with it. Now, Suikoden 3 was able to sidestep this by keeping things stylized and super deformed, but 4 took the leap into more realistic proportional designs, and pretty much pulled it off. I mean, most of the main characters look nice enough, and sometimes the 3D backgrounds are actually damn striking. Now, I'm not sure if 3D game design just costs more in the PS2 era, or if most devs were still learning the tech, but it seemed to me a game had to have a Final Fantasy X-sized budget to really get that overall polished look. 4 having a very modest budget mainly looks good, but lacks in some areas. Animations can be a little spotty sometimes, but these small inconsistencies are nothing compared to our main character's walk cycle. That's right, people, trotting like a preteen girl has a new all-time champion. May his reign be forever. And don't get me started on the run animation. Attention game devs, just speeding up the normal walk cycle with no change to animation is not the kind of corner you want to be cutting in an RPG. I stayed away from hitting the run button for most of the game out of sheer contempt for how dumb it looks. On the upside, character portraits look awesome, and the menus are good looking while being able to mostly stay true to their design in the first 2 games. Rune spells may look a little lackluster, but sometimes the amount of cool looking particle effects on screen have me impressed. One of the key visual features in this game, and probably every other Suikoden game, is the dynamic camera in battles. Some of my fondest memories with the original Suikoden games was being amazed when the camera would zoom into my little pixelated heroes and show off fancy attack animations or counter hits. Well, obviously zooming loses a bit of its luster in a 3D game, but the camera takes these sweeping pans and cinematic angles, which make the action seem more intense and enjoyable. Of course, having to keep up with every single attack and special will lead to a couple of off angles, but even that adds to the charm for me. Now, as most of you know, I run my retro games through my FrameMeister, a video upscaler which makes old 2D games look positively amazing in high def. But sadly, 480p content isn't exactly the FrameMeister's strong suit. Now, there's no doubt it handles this content way better than my TV's component input ever would, but the higher definition sometimes helps show off some flaws, like this clear aliasing around some borders visible in these pre-rendered in-engine cutscenes. Overall, I wasn't floored with the look of Suikoden 4's graphics, but they definitely got the job done, and aside from some bland locations and a fucking ridiculous run animation, there's not much here to criticize. All in all, it's a pretty standard-looking PS2 game, lacking in overall polish, but that tends to happen when a game's graphics stick so rigidly to the middle of the road.
The cat can't win. The cat probably won't be able to come back.
So at this point it should be obvious, there are some serious peaks and valleys to unpack here, so let's take a look at the pros and cons to see if Suikoden 4 is the follow-up the series deserved. Right off the bat, I have to give praise at how faithful this game is to the core ideas that made Suikoden great. Hell, even elements that have been changed from the original still feel like they're keeping the true spirit of the series alive. Battles in this game are really fun, and for a game that makes you fight this much, this is a huge saving grace. With a cast of over 100 characters, you might think that they're all cheap throwaways, but Suikoden 4 actually has some crazy likable personalities. In my case, there were more than a few characters that I really got invested in, and that's what I ultimately look for in an RPG. This game is jam-packed with rare items, hidden recruitable characters, and secret areas. Fans of 100%ing games are definitely in luck here. It seems like every other step triggers a battle, and when you factor in the slow movement speed on the world map, this really starts to discourage the element of discovery that makes this game great. Suikoden 4 has an awesome story and some really fun gameplay, but a very slow start, high encounter rate, and several loading screens keeps the game from achieving greatness until 5 or 6 hours in. Things do get better, but strap in for a long wait before they do. Okay, so I might be petty, but I just had to include this. This game has the most girly walk cycle any male has had in any RPG. Not exactly a deal breaker, but seeing it sped up with the run button is truly a sight to behold. Okay, so the downsides here are pretty severe. Obviously, no one likes an encounter rate that hinders exploration, or a slow burn that equates to holding a lighter to Lake Michigan, but there is honestly a really fun RPG underneath all that. This is a classic case of a few bad decisions spoiling a lot of good ones, but that being said, I still 100% recommend this game. Sure, it's a tough nut to crack, but I think the effort is worthwhile. Those of you looking for a hidden gem are in luck, as most people don't make it past a couple of hours with this one. But if you manage to make it past the barriers erected in your way, you'll find that great Suikoden experience you may have been looking for. Well guys, that does it for me, but don't you worry, the summer of Suikoden is still running strong, so until next time, I'm Jared. And this is Avalanche Reviews. Hey guys, if you like this video, make sure to keep up with the summer of Suikoden by checking out these videos here, and try to spread this around because I think we can agree the world needs a few more Suikoden fans. If you like this type of content, maybe drop by my Patreon to show a little support, and if not, a quick like and a subscribe will do you just fine.